thank you for taking planes, trains, and automobiles. I told the students he was stuck in Aspen yesterday. And what did you drove to Denver to get here?
Yeah, so Aspen is the easiest or the hardest place to get into the world. It's easy if you can fly in, and it's one of the most challenging airports. So if the wind picks up, it's game over. They shut down everything. So we drove to Denver and we made it. So I'm happy to be here. Great to see you guys. How are we feeling tonight?
Good.
Wow, that's good.
Post-COVID, everyone's starting to show up, no masks, so you came at the perfect time.
I was going to say the energy of a room when you think about entrepreneurship, that's that may be the most important part. The last speaker talking about tears and crying and emotions, you're going to feel all of that as an entrepreneur. So you got to keep the energy up, and hopefully tonight we can have some fun with that.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's great to have you here. Three things we want to sort of talk about, and I want the students to get involved as well. They've already drafted some questions, but a little bit about your background, growing up and before Avantstay, and then majority want to talk about the business, the idea, the concept, the customer, how it's different, all those things that they want to ask. And then we'll probably weave in some mindset topics like you've heard, what it takes to be an entrepreneur, as we parade, company after company and founder after founder out here, all of whom are doing really well. We want to paint a balanced picture of what it actually takes. When Gary Vaynerchuk was here, it's like, I think the difference between an entrepreneur and someone who's a B, C, or D, meaning a second, third, fourth person is honest, it's like their stomach and their gut, their ability to take it. So I don't want to paint too rosy a picture. So let's start with where you grew up, family, and sort of where you went to school early on. I think you have how many brothers?
4 brothers, 20-something cousins, but 5 boys, and then Ashton's number 6. So he's the 5th brother, but we all grew up together, and we would sit around tables and cause mischief, and so group travel and spending time with the family was always kind of the core of what we did. And I think, even as you guys think about what you want to do, what you do on a day-to-day basis and how you kind of blur the lines and gray lines between work and play, it makes entrepreneurship a little bit easier. So if it's something, obviously everybody talks about passion and, how do you stay passionate about something? But if you're incorporating that into your day-to-day, I think it's really powerful. So my background is really kind of early days. We grew up in San Francisco and then moved to Marin County. How many people from the Bay Area? There we go. Warriors fans? Let's go. Got to get Curry back. So we grew up in the Bay and went to UCSD to play sports and enjoy the beaches and spent about 7.5 years down there and started businesses. Sitting in classes like this, I think I remember it was my early junior year, and I got an offer to go work at a cell phone store, and it was $12 an hour, and that was big money back then. And on the entrepreneurship side, it was a real estate finance opportunity that me and my friends were looking at. And it was, if you did one deal, close one loan, close one transaction, it came out to $12 an hour for the summer. So that's kind of where things kicked off as far as entrepreneurship. And that summer was a great summer for real estate, for finance. This is back in 2004, so about 20 years ago. And we did hundreds of deals, and then probably stopped going to class as much and started working and building businesses in Southern California. So spent 7 years down there, expanded the businesses to about 7 counties, a few states. And then we sold that business in early kind of 2007, 8. And that's when things started really kind of changing, right? The world was changing in a similar way in some respects to what's happening now. I mean, rates were going up and foreclosures and leverage was through the roof. Now foreclosures and leverage is not where we're at today, but certainly rate increases. And at that time we had flipped the business model to what we call loss mitigation. So you went from refinances and finance and real estate and kind of this boom for many years to what do we do now? We're screwed. And how do we pivot? How do we pivot in an environment that is really challenging? We pivoted to kind of foreclosures and short sales and helping people renegotiate and stay in their homes. So we did that for about 3 years and grew about 200 people across a number of different counties in California, and then sold that business and started working for the investment side, so venture capital, commercial real estate, back in the Bay Area. So we had moved one of our offices up to the Bay Area, so I had gone back to San Francisco, and for those have done some things in finance or have explored kind of the commercial area of finance. It can be dry, and I'll say this: entrepreneurship is the best. It's the best, like hands down. There's nothing better than entrepreneurship, but there's a lot of exposure that you get from working for different institutions and certainly takeaways. And I think one of the biggest takeaways is if you go into these situations and you're thinking, hey, I want to learn, as opposed to, hey, man, this is a grind. It's a very different mentality, and you come out with a whole different tool set and skill set that you can leverage as an entrepreneur. So I started working with them, went back east to Columbia for business school, worked at a number of different startups, and then worked on Wall Street, worked for Morgan Stanley in investment banking. We did technology, M&A, IPOs, equity, global capital markets. So we sat in boardrooms and helped people raise kind of billions of dollars to go public, and then executed M&A transactions. So a little bit around finance, real estate, technology, and that was very much an opportunity to learn how a mature company operates and how a mature company raises capital. And from there, I left that company to join some good friends of mine now are the CEO and CEO of DocuSign. You guys use DocuSign? Mm-hmm. So DocuSign was going public at the time at I think a $2 or $3 billion valuation. How many of you are investors in the public markets? Cool. So 2 or 3 billion, and then it skyrocketed, I think, during the pandemic to something like $50 billion, right? And it's fallen off a cliff recently. It's dropped about 60-70%. But we started a company called Heighten, which we built as a SaaS platform and for enterprise sales, and we built that for a couple of years and sold it to LinkedIn. And it was kind of at the genesis of looking at the sale to LinkedIn and having offers to go, look at DocuSign, take that, work with that team to go public, or work at LinkedIn, and this big opportunity across really the hospitality ecosystem, which is what I was passionate about. When you look at my background of big family, technology, finance, real estate, and then a passion for travel and being around people, you look at the intersection of how this came to be, and it makes sense. It makes sense in a lot of ways. And so that story enabled me to kind of think, this doesn't make sense for me to sit behind a desk at LinkedIn or DocuSign. It makes sense to kind of explore. So we started looking at the ecosystem of hospitality. Does anybody in here know like the comparison of hotels to homes as far as market size? Anybody interested in hospitality?
There are a lot of people.
A lot of people?
I've met with a lot of students, and they're all seem to be interested.
By the way, has anybody stayed at an Avantstay?
Not yet.
Good, because we have a 25-year cap, a 25 years old cap. So you would have had to stay hopefully with your parents.
25-year-old minimum.
Minimum, yes. Sorry, minimum. Anybody going to Coachella? Are you staying in hotels or homes? Homes? Have you ever stayed in a hotel and a home? So that's our concept, right? Is kind of a hotel and a home experience. How do you bring that hotel into a home? And I think there's been a big secular trend and a shift for consumer preferences for the hotel experience is amazing, but how do you get it into a home? And obviously Coachella was the pinnacle. So that's where we started the business. Was we flew down to Palm Springs, and it was right before Coachella. And if you know Coachella, you pay a lot of money for these homes, right? And so we started running the numbers and looking at the market size and the opportunity. And when you compare the hotel world, which is a $700 billion total addressable market, kind of growing 1 to 2%, flat, over the last couple of years, and you look at the short-term rental space, 200+ billion, growing at 10 to 12%. So huge market with no definable, brands that exist, and so we started buying homes, leasing homes, managing homes, and we said, hey, this is a big market. We need technology to manage this. It's a horizontal operation. Think of it as DoorDash kind of for hospitality. Think of it as Lyft as far as logistics and the ecosystem of mobile applications and running horizontal operations. And so we started raising money and built the technology platform. So that's the evolution, and it makes sense in some ways, but I think a lot of it comes from where you started and big family and what you're passionate about, what you like. And when you connect those dots and you fail early, there's a lot of things I don't talk about that happen along the way. There's probably dozens of businesses that fail. And I think the more that you fail early, especially right now, I mean, we're 20 to 22 years old, probably in this class, the more opportunities that you can take to fail today, the better you're going to be as an entrepreneur in the future, by far.
Great. They just completed an assignment on success and failure. Look, in order to get here, they had high SATs, high ACTs, and great test scores. They're used to being perfect. And so that experience of failure, I think the earlier you can experience it, the better for you. Because you get used to just sort of being perfect, not putting things out in the world until they're perfect. And, for every successful entrepreneur, you're going to hear there were many times that things didn't go as planned. Oh, it never goes as planned. Let's talk about entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So define the problem you are solving, or the opportunity, if you don't look at it as a problem, the opportunity you're exploiting, and how you truly differentiate between some of the existing options out there.
Yeah, maybe can I ask a question? So anybody who likes hotels, who's a hotel fan? Anybody? Great. So what is your favorite hotel brand?
Six Senses.
Six Senses. Oh, God. Okay, I love that. Give me another hotel brand.
Aman.
Which one? Aman. Amazing.
You guys travel really well.
I was going to say, I want to travel with you guys. So for those that don't know, Aman, it's the highest ADRs in the nation. It's probably the pinnacle of hotel stays. They built a hotel, just for context, in the middle of nowhere in Moab, is it? It's Moab, I think. And they charge $5,000 a night. Who else? Four Seasons. Yep. Four Seasons, one of the best. So Four Seasons has the highest NPS in the country. 74 NPS. Ritz is number 2 at 67 for a nationally or globally recognized brand. Any others?
Waldorf Astoria.
Waldorf. Amazing. There's one in the one in Beverly Hills, and there's a number of others. So next question would be, what is your favorite short-term rental brand?
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Who said that? Right here. Okay. I'll ask you another question. What about Expedia? Why is that not your favorite hotel brand?
Never used it.
Okay. Any other thoughts about why Expedia is not people's favorite hotel brand?
I would definitely say Airbnb kind of like reaches out to that younger market. It's much more accessible than Expedia, and they market much more to our age range than like Expedia travel experience.
Completely agree.
Probably because it's a platform, not a brand.
It's a platform. So I would tweak that slightly and say that Airbnb is definitely a brand. It's one of the most powerful brands in the world. And interestingly, when you take Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, Wyndham, and IHG, and you combine those 5 largest hotel companies in the world, and you combine their market cap, it's smaller than Airbnb, all combined. So Airbnb is larger than the 5 largest hotel brands in the world. But to your point, nobody answers what's your favorite hotel brand by saying Expedia, but almost everybody says their favorite hotel brand is Airbnb, right? And that is the power of Airbnb, and that's really compelling. But Airbnb doesn't control any of the experience. And so one of the things to answer your question is, we are a brand that now exists and distributes product on Airbnb. We distribute on Expedia, Bookings, Marriott Homes and Villas. You use your Bonvoy points to book. And so we are that consistency in that brand and that control, that vertical integration that never existed. And so if you look at the hotel space, like we said, it was around 700 billion. There's 70 multi-billion-dollar hotel brands. So as you guys start to market size, as an entrepreneur and think about where you want to exist and how you want to play, 70 multi-billion-dollar brands in hotels. When we started Avantstay, there were 0 short-term rental brands that existed that were worth $1 billion. And now there's 3. And we believe in a market that's 200 billion growing at 10%, there will be 20 plus. And so that's something to kind of think about as you look at TAMs and addressable market. And the problem we want to solve was you have 23,000 short-term rental companies with a lot of lack of consistency, right? So no real kind of licensing, no regulatory framework, no design in the analog sense, which means in the home, no digital access through mobile concierge. How many people show up to a house on Airbnb with a fridge stock? Anybody ever had a fridge stock? So we stock our fridges. Anybody had a private chef? No private chefs. One of my favorite things about hotels is you clean your room every day, right? So you can clean through the mobile app, you can click and you can have your room cleaned every day, or you can have your house cleaned every 2 or 3 days. So some of these kind of hotel amenities, that's what we call it, a hotel in a home. Some of these hotel amenities is what gets us excited about the consistency, the elevation of the experience in the short-term rental space.
Do you have to pay extra for those, or they come with us?
Everything's extra. But yes, and but people are happy to pay for it. I think that's the interesting thing is that, if you're getting a private chef or getting a fridge stock, all you're doing is saving time. When we used to kind of pitch this, we would say, hey, the average trip is, let's say, you get in on Friday and you leave on Sunday, it could be 48 hours. You spend the first 6 hours of your trip shopping and setting up the house. That's a very expensive 6 hours, right? It's 15% of your trip is spent setting it up. The last thing you want to do is kind of spend time setting up your trip when you're on vacation. So how do you create a vacation when you walk in the door? How do you start your vacation the second you get there so that it becomes, it doesn't become laborious. It becomes very easy and seamless. Great questions.
There are going to be a lot of them. I think of it a lot in terms of Uber and taxis in a way that people just got used to a really mediocre or poor experience with taxis. They a lot of things Uber. I think a lot of people get used to this hotel experience. When you asked us if we liked hotels, yes, some hotels, but not many. And in fact, even people that can afford the Four Seasons and Amman and all the ones that they mentioned, they may want a different experience, which is to be sort of immersed in a home, not, with people above and below you and side to side and things like that. So I don't necessarily see it as a substitute, it's sort of a compliment. You see it the same way. You're not cannibalizing hotel rooms necessarily, right?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think it's always existed. I think is the interesting thing, right? Vacation rentals have existed. I think consumers, they've been around for hundreds of years. I think consumers' expectations have elevated for what that experience looks like. But I think to your point, even more so is that there is a different type of use case. So when you're going with 8 to 10 of your friends to Coachella, you're thinking, hey, I want to stay in a home. I don't want to be separated around a hotel. In my family, when we would stay at a hotel, I would knock on Jake's door. He'd be, he wouldn't be in the lobby at the right time, or maybe had one too many cocktails the night before. And it's complicated because you're now trying to put all of your brothers and family and friends across a very large hotel, as opposed to the ease of being in a home and walking out and cooking breakfast together. So it's a very different experience, and it hasn't cannibalized, actually expanded people's appreciation for the kind of experience. And when you look at the new world of remote work and work from anywhere, I would encourage you guys think of ideas from an entrepreneurship perspective. Think about where the puck's headed. The puck's headed in a digital nomad world, in a work from anywhere. I think how many people are online in this class right now, as opposed to in the room. It's very much the freedom to kind of be digital and to be in Park City and get a couple runs in the morning and work the rest of the day. That is the new world we live in, and I think it's exciting. And you don't necessarily always want to stay in a hotel for that type of experience.
Particularly if it's a longer stay, how many days you really want to be in a hotel.
Right.
You mentioned that you've got a 25-year-old minimum. Tell us who your customer is. If you could sort of describe the demographics, the psychographics, how much do they make? What's your core customer, or if you've got customer segments, how you provide it. Because you have some corporate segments and individual segments as well.
So from the demo, from a booking perspective, 52% women, 48% men. The average age is I think 41 years old, but it's 25 to 60, so very wide demographic. There's a lot of generational stays, so grandma's birthday, events, bachelorettes. We have hundreds of properties in Nashville, and it's the group party capital of the world, right? And so it really is generational, we think. And we want to expand our offering to kind of capture more on the lower end and on the upper end. But it's a millennial demographic. And it's very familial from the sense of whether it's friends or couples or families. It is a familial demographic. I would say it's attainable from an experience and affordability and luxury perspective. So what do I mean by that? How much Four Seasons up there? How much do you think an average night at the Four Seasons is?
1,500.
1,500, right? And how many people can fit in a room?
That one room too.
Two. So $750 per person. And a lot of people look at Avantstay and they go, hey, this is luxury experience. It's so amazing. You know, I could never afford it. Our average ADR, which means your average daily rate, is $950. And our average number of people that stay in a home, we have about 4.5 bedrooms on average, is 7. So that's $140, $135. You guys are smarter than me, so you guys can do the math, but it's $130, $140 per person per night. So not only is it an elevated experience, which people coin as luxury, but it's also a very affordable. And I think, you know, when you look at entrepreneurship, there's 3 things you want to think about: cheaper, better, faster. So you can build something that's cheaper, better, and faster. You have a good idea, but obviously ideas are kind of meaningless in the whole scheme of things.
Anna Lee, you have questions? Anna, you're on? Speak up. You had on like combining the digital and analog elements, I think. Yeah, go ahead, speak up.
Avantstay is both a digital and service product in the sense that the digital platform is key to booking rentals or buying homes. But in a sense, there's also a physical component because your interior design teams go into these homes and design the houses. So I was wondering, which of the two do you think has a bigger value add to Avantstay? And when you are developing your product, which of the two did you kind of focus on developing first and why?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It really is, because we think about it deeply from the day we built the business, and it really is kind of ingrained into the sequencing of how you build. So vision, you know, as an entrepreneur is one thing, but then to go out and execute the vision in a sequence manner is a totally different ballgame, right? Your vision is always 100 steps ahead of where you can execute. So I think it's spot on from you know how you think about the way we think of hospitality is holistic in nature. I wouldn't necessarily encourage starting in hospitality as an entrepreneur, because it is not, hey, just have a house with a nice bed. It's have a house with a nice bed and a digital app and a stock fridge and a concierge, and have support, make sure everything works in the house, and have a beautiful couch, and make sure you have Netflix and Amazon Prime. And it is very holistic, and you have to cater to so many different people. The way we thought about it was as long as, and this is a benefit for the industry that we're in, the benchmark for success in short-term rentals is very low, right? It's very low. So you have a lot of unsophisticated operations that have been running vacation rentals with furniture from the 70s and 80s. You sit on the couch, dust flies up, grandma's quilts on the bed. It's just kind of funky and weird. You walk in, there's stuff in the kitchen drawers. You have, maybe the clothes hanging up in the closet, right, of the people. And it just doesn't feel like that hospitality hotel experience. So we built it first to build an operating system and a PMS, but the analog piece is what we did first for the experience. So the analog was, let's make sure the home is clean and that we have, great design and great experience. And then people will kind of say, hey, this was a little bit better than what we got from, the other company. And so because it was incrementally better, we were able to kind of scale off of that. And it takes time to build technology. It takes time to build platforms, to build out the logistics and operations behind what it takes to run a field operation to support the demand on the customer side. So digitally, we want to start with analog, so the great experience, and then digitally back it up so that then we can kind of blow people away with the experience after we had already hooked them in from an incrementally, albeit small, but importantly small, better experience. So again, kind of back to some of the sequencing as you think about building businesses, sequencing is very important.
How many homes is it that you guys have right now? And is it only in the US or is it all around the world?
So it's only in North America. So we're in Cabo, and which is kind of LA 2.0 in some respects, right? Yeah, it's, you know, and that's why we're there, right? The way we started the business was let's get a bunch of destinations around LA where we're based. So you start in San Diego, Temecula, Palm Springs, Big Bear, Temecula, Lake Arrowhead, right? So your core customer base, you start to think about repeats. I remember the first venture capital meeting we walk into, they go, "What's your repeat rate?" I go, "I'm in Palm Springs, I've been there for 6 months, I do group travel." Like it's the wrong question, right? It's the wrong question because you're not going to go to Palm Springs 4 or 5 times in 6 months. It's just the wrong question. Now we're in 120 cities. You know, repeat rate is something that you can kind of calculate. When you're thinking of skiing, when you're thinking of a city, when you're thinking of, you know, ACL or Coachella, you're thinking of Avantstay, and the repeat rate organically increases. But I think the question was what?
No, I was just asking how many homes.
Yeah, how many homes? So we have 1,500 homes today. We're adding about 100 to 150 homes a month. And so that's a heavy lift from an operational perspective, right? Onboarding and design and supply chain is a major issue for us right now. I mean, there's a lot of friction around supply chain right now. So it is a when you run vertically integrated businesses, it is very challenging to kind of have all the pieces working together. But you know, it's once you get it, it's an advantage. I read an article, I think it was a few days ago, Elon Musk. The reason he's been able to deliver more cars than anybody else is because he controls the supply chain. And so if you look at, they just opened up Germany, and that was very important to him, was run a vertically integrated operation where you could control the supply chain and the full experience, and now it's paying massive dividends. And you know, so some of the things that you think about when you're really going for the full holistic experience, you have to have control.
Just think operationally, you know, if you have 500 rooms in your Marriott, they're all one place. Your cleaning's there, your services are there. Your 1,500 are spread all over the place. So imagine that operational logistics challenge of getting the car in the driveway, the groceries, things clean, all those services. That's what, when you can build the model and scale it, you really are in a position where people can't, you can call people.
Yeah.
Let them ask you.
Yeah, and it's, you know, 1,500 homes is about 10,000 rooms. So we look at it as rooms. It's almost, to your point, it's like we're running 1,500 hotels, right? It's because you're running a horizontal operation. It's very different, and those rooms generate a very different caliber of revenue than a hotel.
So I come from like a family that's kind of like to buy big back wedding vibe. That we all together go to different hotels, vacations. So we've been members of Inspirato for a long time now. Part of these resorts. How do you guys differentiate yourselves from those like other luxury vacation rental companies, especially when you have the Airbnb competitors?
Did you say Inspirato?
Yeah,
Exclusive
Inspirato.
Yeah. So great question. No, the company's very well. Inspirato is not public. Inspirato is a subscription service, right? There's subscriptions as low as $3,000 a year up to $30,000 a year. And so the challenge with subscription hospitality is obviously there's supply and demand imbalances. So, you know, that's something we think about is we like to offer a la carte service. And if we can deliver an experience without the membership, it might be Avant Prime as far as, you know, a membership, but subscription to pay, you know, $30,000 a year, the way that we think about it is, if you can have that same experience through Avantstay, you will likely kind of shift in that direction so that you can choose what you want when you want. When Inspirato started, it was the best experience in the game, right? There was no competitive experience that existed. They do stock your fridges, right? That's some of the stuff that they do. I'm sure you've experienced that. So we take a scaled approach, an a la carte, at least in hospitality, with a membership model, like an Avant Prime model, is something that becomes more scalable. On the exclusive resorts is an ownership program. So for those that don't know exclusive resorts, your payment into exclusive is about $500,000. So in order to be a member, you actually buy into equity in the homes, and most of those homes are $3 to $10 million. So again, it's while there are homes in the Avantstay portfolio that exist that are of that caliber, we're much more of an attainable and scalable brand around access that is really kind of ubiquitous from a demo perspective.
Can you give us how a transaction works? So let's say they rented a house for 5 days at $1,000 per day, $5,000. But can you give us a single unit transaction, how you make money? Because you are also investing time and resources in design and furniture. So it can't just be sort of the same split that it would be in VRBO or Airbnb.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we underwrite, we have a full underwriting team, right? So we have underwriting, revenue management, and there's a lot of components that you have to build out for, to kind of enable that. And part of what we built instead of exclusive resorts was we built a PropCo. So we just raised a $1.5 billion fund to buy properties that will deliver an attainable experience. And because we built the underwriting muscle, that's something that it enabled us to do. But I think that, the way that we look at our investment is a partnership. And so what a lot of managers do is they say, hey, we're the best at revenue management, we're the best distribution, and let us manage your home. What we say is we want to put money into your home, make it a beautiful experience because we care about our brand, and we don't want grandma's furniture in the house, and we want premium linens, and we want premium pillows, and we want all of the experiential amenities. We want the paddle boards and kind of the cornhole sets and the bocce ball. We want all of these experiences, and we're happy to pay for it, but we want a longer term contract, and we want a partnership, and maybe we want an additional revenue stream to pay for those upfront costs. So there's ways that you can structure things in a sophisticated way to convince people of, hey, we will partner with you, we'll put up more capital, but in return, we want to be paid back for that capital. And in the end, you will make more money and we'll make more money and the customer will be happier. So from our perspective, it's a better way of doing things. Now, some of that requires significant capital up front to raise. And I think part of maybe, what you guys think about as far as taking risks, being able to raise capital is a big part of entrepreneurship.
Questions? Keep asking, guys.
So where and how do you find funding to start a company?
Yeah, I think does anybody know what entrepreneurship means, the definition? Okay. Take a guess, Saba.
The creation or extraction of value.
Yeah.
Google says.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And so, I've read a bunch of different definitions. One definition is taking financial risk for financial profits. I mean, Google might have something what's the number 2 one on there? But it's taking financial risk for financial profit. And I think what a lot of people talk about in entrepreneurship is, hey, how do we, how do I take risks? How do I get comfortable taking risks? Well, you don't always have to take risks with your money. Right? There's something called OPM, there's capital, there's funding, there's fundraising. And so if you can get really good at telling stories and having vision and raising capital, those risks become mitigated. Now, obviously, the last thing you want to do is lose money, but when you raise money, it gives you the freedom to pursue your vision in a manner that maybe you wouldn't do with your own capital. And that's a very different approach. And especially in the world that we're in today, it's very hard to build companies fast that are big, that are scalable, that can change the way that we do things without raising capital. So the way that we've done it is through networks, through working with people in the past that you've done, you worked your asses off for, and that you've shown that you can execute. So hard work works, right? Hard work works. And I think in this room, when you look to your left and right, you guys are all brilliant. And most of you should start companies together. I mean, you should look to your left and right and start a company. And there's no time like the present. And so finding people to network with and then going out and creating a story around your vision and then raising capital. There's never been a better time to raise capital than now.
Did you face a lot of no's, or you had a good track record beforehand, so you probably
no. I faced a ton of no's. So the seed round's a good question, because the seed round I bootstrapped the business for the first kind of 12 months, because part of bootstrapping a business, you kind of figure out what you got, right? And you kind of you're testing different models, and you may not know what you got. I'm much more of a get out and execute versus a plan and then execute, and everybody's different. Some people will plan, hey, this is great, let's go execute. I just start trial and error. And that's always been my approach, and both approaches worked. But the seed round, we had over 100 in 30 or 40 meetings for the seed round, and we had 128 no's, something like that. I think we had couple term sheets. So it was, you get a ton of no's, and what the no's do is it helps you martini glass your idea, and it helps you refine your thought process and refine your story, and it helps you become, a better orchestrator of not only the narrative that you're trying to portray, but also the business model that you're putting out there. So no's are a very good thing. It's very healthy. It's very normal. In the second round, we went out to 3 people. We got 3 term sheets, right? In the third round. So I think early on, getting a lot of no's is not only completely normal, it's very, very healthy. Very healthy to get a lot of no's.
In your rounds, they're public, so I think they're.
Yeah. So we raised a $6 million. So first we bootstrapped it. So I funded the business with about $500,000 of personal capital that I had earned over 10 plus years of working, and then we raised a $1.1 million kind of safe that we converted into a seed round. That was $6 million in seed and $3 million in debt, so kind of a $9 million seed round at that point. But we had, the basics of the team. We had some cash flow. The business is a cash flow business in some ways, so very different than kind of going out and building a pure technology platform and having zero revenue and starting 2 years later. So you can be more comfortable bootstrapping something like that because the cash flow is there. And then our Series A was 21 million. Led by a number of kind of tier 1 growth equity companies, and I would encourage you guys as you start thinking about fundraising, stay agnostic and stay away from strategics to the extent you can early on, because you never know what you have, and strategics come later. And so stay very kind of normalized when you think of who you're approaching and who you're taking money from early. And then our Series B was 160 million. And that was, about 6 months ago. And we brought a lot of strategics. Capital One invested, huge hoteliers invested, a bunch of real estate funds invested. And then we raised recently, about a month ago, we raised $1.5 billion to go start buying properties that we will have we basically raised a REIT. We built a REIT that will be, and so most of the hotels have done this. We're the first short-term rental REIT that exists, but Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, they all have REITs that power the business. So these REITs trade on public markets. Host Hotel is one, but there's a bunch of REITs that power the brands, and so we thought about it the same way. And so a lot of what happens in entrepreneurship, building great companies, is a slight deviation. Venmo sold for, I can't remember, but it was like remove a click, and you make $1 billion. And so a lot of what exists today, Uber, it's just deviations of what has existed in the past, but they're important deviations, very important deviations. And so we look towards how things were done in the past and see how that can correlate to how we want to execute our business.
So with the student question, so are you moving? You started as an asset light company, right? Although mixed a little bit because you're putting money into the asset. Mm-hmm. Asset light means you lease it, you don't own it, you don't start it from scratch or build it out of the ground. And now you're moving to owning them. Is that for quality control?
Yeah, so we're still, the core platform is still asset light. So Marriott, for example, doesn't own any of the assets, but they have a REIT that powers it. So the REIT is really what we call off balance sheet capital, which then powers the brand. The brand will always be a technology platform that's asset light, but what we want to find is better control mechanisms, to your point, so that the experience can be elevated. So if I'm buying a house and able to put money into it and really curate the experience, that's going to be slightly better than maybe managing somebody's house that we're just designing and putting furnishings in and elevating on a lighter touch way. Now, we still do both of those. We have thousands of owners, and this is kind of a new development. So call it the Avantstay collection, right? And when you think of Marriott, I think it has, does anybody know how many brands Marriott has? So Marriott has 35, 36 brands. And I think You know, 10 or 11 of them are worth $1 billion plus. But when you build hospitality platforms, you build different structures, and I think the overall theme behind Avantstay is that kind of elevated consistency and getting the holistic experience that maybe you wouldn't get elsewhere.
Yeah, I just want to go back to one of the, first of all, thank you for being here. I want to go back to one of the definitions you gave of entrepreneurship. It's like financial risk, like your financial profit.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned about like starting like doing entrepreneurship like in college, and then like you went back to like Columbia Business School and then like worked in then entrepreneurship again. Like, how would you like say like when to decide to like leave those big jobs like art stuff versus like leaving like a business that failed like to go working with them? How would you like manage that dynamic? And like, how do you make those choices?
Yeah, I think that entrepreneurship it's kind of a culture. It's a lifestyle. You got to be a little nuts, and you got to be really committed. So we always ask people, you know, are you interested or are you committed, right? And it's great that there's a lot of interest around entrepreneurship, but committed is a totally different level of interest from an entrepreneurship perspective. And so when I personally went to corporations or Columbia or you know, things that maybe are a deviation from entrepreneurship, I was entering that from the perspective of I really want to learn. I want to learn, you know, how this works so that I can be a better entrepreneur. But so I knew what I wanted to learn, and then as soon as I learned it, I was out. But the flip side would be if you're going there and you're not sure if you want to be an entrepreneur. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, which entrepreneurship is the best. And you know, it's better to fail often and early and get out there and take risks today, as many as you can, and you know, that will kind of dictate your tolerance level for that. I mean, the reality is, from a confidence perspective, confidence isn't about being right. Confidence is more about not being afraid to be wrong, right? And so if you're stuck at a corporate job and you're wondering what if, then you should go, you know, test the waters. And just being right means nothing. Being right is kind of a way. Not being afraid to be wrong is more powerful, in my opinion.
And you don't have to be the one with the idea necessarily. You know, you can join a company that's emerging, one that's funded. I mean, if you want to be a founder, you know, it's not like best idea on the whiteboard by Friday wins. You know, it's like, so you don't want to be squeezing that. Go ahead. It's great.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing, and then because I think the idea thing is really important. It's an important concept. But ideas, we talk about this in our exec meetings. We talk about it with our companies, and we always say ideas are cheap and execution is expensive. And so everybody in this room has an amazing idea, for sure. And frankly, doesn't mean much. You know, even Elon, a lot of the companies he built weren't his ideas, right? He's just an incredible executor. Now he's a visionary, and he's obviously an incredible entrepreneur. But I think, you know, to your point, it's really important, whether you're a founder or whether you're joining a team, you know, the idea piece is a part of it, and it evolves and you iterate on it and it changes. And that's the agile methodology of an entrepreneur. But ultimately execution is what pays.
Yeah. So earlier on, you mentioned you're a go out and get it done type of guy and kind of learn from experience. So I'm assuming with that, the Avantstay didn't start off as the current iteration of what it is now. So when was that moment that you realized, like, clicked and you were like, oh shit, like I got the idea now, this is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think I thought it would be easier, and so the original concept was around groups and bringing groups of people together and getting really excited about how can you bring groups of people together in a more efficient and seamless way to enjoy life and have more human connection and start it without all the work and stress of trying to get people together, because it's hard to get groups together. I mean, that's one of the biggest bottlenecks for group travel is the effort that it takes to bring a group together. And so if you could unlock that, that means there's more demand for your concept. But I think it's, you know, you gotta jump in, and once you jump in, it will, you know, it starts to evolve, and when I knew, you know, back to sequencing, when I knew, I still don't know if we have anything, right? You never know if you have anything, but you have like a vision, and the vision, you know, I wish that today we could deliver you a fridge stocking in 3 hours. It's not possible, right? And so I think you always have your vision way far ahead as an entrepreneur where you can be at today. And that's part of the excitement of being an entrepreneur, is that there's no chance you'll ever meet your own level of expectation, because you're constantly evolving that vision. And, you know, realistically, roads weren't built for destinations, they're built for journeys, right? So then you have to enjoy the journey. And if you're on the journey, then and you're enjoying it, then it doesn't matter when you got it. The light bulb, we still don't have it. We have no clue what we're doing. We have no idea, and you don't need to, but as long as you're enjoying the journey, you're not worried about the destination. If you're worried about the destination, you have a problem.
So obviously being an entrepreneur, you have to be good at public speaking for like investors and like groups like this. So do you have any tips on how to become like a more confident speaker, and how does that impact you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I don't think that you're always, I think there's two things. One is, if you're passionate about, and you know your product or what you're trying to do, you're an expert in it because you just live it, you breathe it, and you just know it. That will show, regardless of your ability to kind of communicate in a public forum or in a private forum in a meeting. And so, most important thing is know your product, right? Really know your product. I think the second piece is probably, you know, more around just terms, just as many. I mean, the first 10 or 15 meetings of me pitching this was like disaster, right? I mean, it's just disaster. Maybe even the first 50, and a lot of this stuff is just constant consistency and iterations. Somebody once told me, they're like, you know, do people like Tom Brady, does he get tired of consistency? Like, he doesn't get tired of it and continuing. You know, I thought it was amazing. The guy's like, he put a post up saying unfinished business. The guy's got 7 Super Bowls, 4 MVPs, 3 Super, whatever he has, like unfinished business. Like, so I think that you have to be excited about being consistent and continuing to say the same thing. And as a founder, you have to be okay with telling the same thing to a lot of people over and over and over again, which frankly is not always that fun.
With enthusiasm.
With enthusiasm.
So look at the practice. He had 130 pitches.
That's
About practice.
that's me not telling you guys the whole story.
Whether it's Kobe Bryant or Pete Carroll or an entrepreneur, it really is the practice that makes you
I think that's true. I mean, Kobe probably works harder than anybody, right?
set a standard that almost anyone in any field just says that's the standard.
That's the standard. And I'm not sure anybody will ever live up to.
So how is it operating in expansion mode versus profitability mode? And when do you expect to be profitable?
Great question. So I've asked this question to my board and to investors and to operators, you know, a bunch of times. Like, how do you know? And I think there's one thing. When you have product market fit in a huge marketplace, you run as fast as you can without letting the wheels fall off. And so, you know, the last thing you want to do when you're in expansion mode growing is break too many things. You want to break some things, you just don't want to break everything. And so break shit, but don't bring the house down. And then as far as profitability, once you start growing at a more tepid pace, then you start really locking in on profitability. Yeah.
What's your occupancy rate right now?
It's very market dependent. So for example, like in core urban corridors like Nashville and Austin, it ranges from 70 to, you know, some places 90%. In destination markets, we think of occupancy as weekend occupancy. So we think of it as 85% plus on weekends, 100% on holidays, and then, you know, 30 to 50% on weekdays, which averages out to about 60%, which is very good. I think the average is around 40-45% for destination markets. So it really is dependent on the location. we think of occupancy is a little bit different. We think of it as RevPAR. So ADR is your average daily rate, multiply that times your occupancy, you come out with a RevPAR. That's your revenue per available night. And so that's a combination of, I'd rather lease a place for $1,000 a night for 5 nights than $500 a night for 10, because less wear and tear on the property, less impact, less utilities, less costs, less turns. So we look at it more from an economics perspective versus occupancy. Occupancy is certainly a great KPI, great indicator of success, but it is, it's not, kind of the primary for us.
Would you want to ever be at 100% for a consistent period? What would that tell you? If you were operating at 100% occupancy, what would that tell you? You need to raise your rates. So a lot of people, the luxury hotels, the Montage, they want to be at 75, 80, pressing their rates and not be at 90. Is your denominator like 365 days on all these properties? Are all the property agreements say that the property has to be available full time because you put money in furniture in it?
Yeah, no, good question. And some of our houses, especially the more premium houses, if somebody wants to use it for 2 to 6 weeks, we let owners use it. But it obviously impacts their revenue. We also do leases and guarantees, so it changes the underwriting and what we offer. So there is, some kind of calculus that you have to run there. But anything over, 4 to 6 weeks, if it's more than that, then you lose our ability to kind of maintain our brand and our experience. So if somebody's using the house 3 or 4 months, they're bringing their stuff in, that's not for us. And there's a lot of people like that, and that's, that's an Airbnb or a Vacasa or, there's a number of required, property managers that are wonderful that just run a different product. They maybe aren't thinking it from a brand perspective, but thinking of it as a service. We think of it very much as a brand.
That's entrepreneurship, entrepreneur with their own vision for like a excellent service or like whatever product you're trying to do. Over series A and B, like those major ones, how do you view, say, giving away control, equity, or like board seats to investors?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I think control is important, but if you have the right people, it's less important. And if your control can be viewed a few different ways. There's voting control, there's Zuckerberg voting control kind of stuff, right? There's equity control, and then there's, kind of having control over the narrative in the room. Elon Musk is not I know I keep going back to Elon, but he's pretty good. But he's not the leading vote shareholder, and he's not the equity shareholder of Tesla, but I'd say he has control, right? And so I think control there's levels of control, and you can control a board without having the right number of board seats or majority. So there's layers to it, and I would say every situation is very independent and it's kind of exclusive to the situation, but the longer you can keep control, keep it, would be my suggestion. Go ahead.
So I know with, Airbnb, VRBO, they're kind of just like private people making their own money, and then they kind of get money off that. And you guys seem like you're buying homes and then remodeling them and going from there. And I know what like groups like Marriott or Hyatt do now is they don't really build their hotels. They wait for a developer to build it, buy it, throw their name on it, and then run it. Is your long-term plan like eventually just having private developers build it, meet your check boxes, and then you throw your name on there and then it goes like that? Or do you want to keep the play of buying your own homes, developing them yourself, and then going exclusively through that, or kind of branching out a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, very good question. And you kind of hit a few things that we talk about all the time. Today, the majority of our business is not our REIT buying homes. The majority of our business is working with individual homeowners. I think we do a lot of stuff on development. So we're developing 22 5-bedrooms in the Gulch in downtown Nashville. We're developing a 100-home community that's going to be able to deliver an entirely differentiated experience with golf carts driving around and dropping off the cooler at the front door, right? And so there's a few different ways to look at it from when you're thinking of building a community that's 50 to 100 homes, like a Discovery or something like that. It's in a location that doesn't, that maybe is outside of the core city. So we're always going to want to have access to locale. When we think of building a business, you know, at least from my perspective, especially in hospitality, you think of front end local, back end institutional. So that means, how do you integrate into these neighborhoods and these communities? How do you stay local from the field and have, you know, back end institutional operation where you can actually stock the fridge and provide the chefs and do the cleans and really run things from an institutional perspective. So we won't have access to homes on the beach if all we did was work with developers, because there's no ability to develop on the close side. So I think it's all of the above would be the answer. It's all of the above, which is, we love the experience of kind of vacation resort communities. And then we love also being in the kind of the threads and the ecosystem of the communities. So I think it's a combination of both. And the overall theme is, how do you deliver a great experience in both sets?
Perfect, thank you.
That me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, this time I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. I was wondering how you balance the consistency of your brand with the individuality of each location.
Yeah, so that's the hardest thing, right? I mean, it's hard to, you're taking custom homes across hundreds of cities and you're trying to create a brand that's consistent. I think, again, that for us, it's how do you deliver a great group experience in a custom, unique setting in a home, and with the local flavor. And it's, you know, it's not easy to do, but we're going to design homes in the mountains differently than we do on the beach, differently than we do in the desert. And the thesis is, Avantstay knows how to bring the local experience into a group optimized home for, you know, a elevated short-term rental experience. Not easy to do, but we're trying.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
So the short-term rental industry has kind of come under fire recently a little bit about like concerns with housing affordability, especially even those vacancy rates that you're kind of shooting for. So how are y'all navigating that and like other potential problems that come down there?
Yeah, really good question. So there's not only, you know, kind of affordability questions around our industry, but there's regulation and you know, the last thing you want is a party, you'll be living next to a party house, right? And so there's a lot of licensing enforcement. We are big fans of regulation and compliance because it favors good operators, it favors people that follow the rules. And so there's a lot of enforcement and regulation around that. As far as affordability, you know, just as an example, in New York, they ran kind of numbers around short-term rentals and the impact. And it was something like, do you remember what it was? It was something like $8 or $9 was the difference. And so the reality is there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of housing, and the short-term rentals is 0.00000 something percent, and such a small component. I just did see an article the other day where somebody said, because this city shut down short-term rentals, it actually drove up the prices of the homes in that city, because now to access that city, you had to buy a home. And so everybody was buying homes. So it's kind of the reverse effect, which, you know, if you can rent a home, then maybe you're not buying it because the utilization of that home increases. And utilization rates of homes actually creates affordability because you have more people in the home. So I think that TBD is the answer, and we're figuring it out. A lot of the data supports that there's limited to no increase in rent. And frankly, I've seen recently some things that actually say the contrary, which is once people cannot rent homes in the city, they end up having to buy them, which drives up the price increase, kind of a reverse affordability issue. So something that we're, you know, we think about a lot. It's a very, very good question, and probably one of the biggest topics in our space is around affordability, regulation, and licensing.
Last question, make it a good one. Time flies when you're having fun, Sean.
A lot of good questions. It's like I'm on a hot seat.
I know. Who's got a great one to finish? You already asked one. Who hasn't asked the question? It has one left. Have you asked one? All right. You do a lot. He did a lot of research. Go ahead.
Good.
What's the biggest obstacle you see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I never ask things in absolutes, or I never think about things in absolutes. Like, there is no biggest obstacle. There's a bunch of obstacles. There's tons, right? What keeps you up at night? Everything keeps me up at night, right? There's not like one thing that keeps me up. It's like something kept me up last night and something different's going to keep me up tonight. But I do think that when you create a business that scales, And what scales gives you efficiency, it gives you ability to run loyalty, it gives you ability to run a better operation. You guys aren't getting Amazon same-day packages without scale, right? It just doesn't happen. So scale does create a better experience. You're not getting your Uber without scale. You know, they don't exist without that kind of scale. So we think scale is very important. In our business, it's more operationally heavy than just scaling Instagram, right? You scale Instagram, you buy more data centers and you scale the technology. That's easier. In our business, scaling operations creates a level of complexity that is very challenging, but it's also very rewarding, and it's a problem-solving thing that we enjoy. So I think the biggest obstacle is how do you match scale, the pace of scale, with the operational experience for your customers.
Is there anywhere where we can be useful to you? Are you hiring young, smart people coming out of school? Where can we get involved and support you guys?
For sure. So I think we have 350 roles. So we were 80 people hitting the pandemic, and then we cut down to about 45, 50 people right when the pandemic hit. And now we're about 600 people today, 650 people. We're hiring about 100 people a month. So we are moving quickly, and we have tons of roles, and we'd love to hire all of you because you guys are obviously the cream of the crop, and it'd be wonderful for you guys to kind of submit. I'll give my email or email of people that can facilitate it, but you guys will get popped to the top. We are based in LA. We just signed a new office space in Culver City. We're really excited about. So that's big, and then continue to kind of travel and get out there and experience life and enjoy it. And I think the more that we can create the blur the lines between work and play, the more that not only benefits our company, but I think benefits a lot of the things that the previous speaker was talking about, which is the balance between the physical and emotional, and how that freedom enables you to be a lot happier.
There's two things that changed during the pandemic. It's one, the flexibility with many employers and new occupations that allow you to work anywhere in the world. And two, the desire, where everyone sort of realized they would call pandemic epiphanies, that life is fragile, life is short. Am I going to wait till I'm 60 or 70 before I actually enjoy my life? Or am I going to try and combine my career and an adventure? That's why I love this space. I live this life. I travel 6 months out of the year. As soon as we're done on April 27th, by April 30th, I'm gone. I'm in Costa Rica, I'm in Mexico, building places, because I'm doing the slow version of this. He's building it technologically. I'm a real estate lawyer and a real estate developer, so I'm going to go build places in Todos Santos in Costa Rica. There's no substitute for being there. I love this stuff. I want to live a month at all these places. In Portugal, you can live this great life now that wasn't available to you 2 years ago. It's awesome time to be you, because your employers they're not only going to give you 2, 3, 4 weeks vacation, they're probably going to say, we'll give you your vacation and we're going to give you 2 months of remote work. And we're going to put a group with you to go down to Todos Santos or Cabo. So this is just an awesome time. I am so excited, so thankful that you came, and we are cheering for you. Whatever we can help, let's hear it for Sean.
Thanks, guys.